We held 6 hearings in total. We saw the numbers, we saw the failures.
Tonight, state lawmakers are pushing to clean up Michigan's food assistance program as the state reports the program has an error rate of about 10%. That report came from the State House Oversight Committee this week.
More than 1.4 million Michigan residents are on some form of food assistance, but the report shows many of them are being under or overpaid. News 10's Riley Connell joins us in studio to tell us what this means.
Yeah, Ann and David, that 10% error rate in Michigan's food assistance program is below the national average, but state and federal officials say it is still too high. If Michigan can't bring that number down, there could be consequences at the federal level. I spoke with a local food pantry director who says she wants to see the system improved, but those efforts must come with more resources.
I would say we go through about 150 gallons a day.
Amanda Thompson feeds roughly 80 to 100 families each day at Helping Hands Food Pantry in Charlotte. She says the pantry fills in the gaps that government food assistance can't reach.
A lot of our seniors who are living on fixed incomes are only relying on $24 a month in food assistance.
Thompson says that need is growing constantly. Some state lawmakers believe Michigan should keep a closer eye on who is getting those benefits and how much they're receiving.
Bottom line, taxpayers are done paying for waste, fraud, and abuse.
A report from the Office of Representative Jason Wolford shows Michigan is over and underpaying benefits, resulting in an error rate of about 10%. Under a new Trump administration rule, if the state can't bring the rate below 6% by 2027, it could face a $350 million federal fine. Wolford says the work begins with fixing the benefits application, saying it is wide open.
Simply apply as a guest with nothing more than a name and an address. No photo ID, no real verification.
Democratic State Representative Penelope Cernoglu argues the system is protected from fraud through federal verification,
including automated federal and state data matches, identity verification tools, employer wage databases.
Thompson supports some system reform, but says more restrictions would hurt people in need.
The more scrutiny and processes you have in place, the more people who aren't even going to be willing to apply.
Representative Wolford is proposing required photo ID and signature verification for every food stamp benefit card and monthly updates on quality control from the state health department. Thompson believes the state needs to commit more money and resources to avoid overwhelming an already short-handed system. Back to you, Ann.
Riley, thank you. If Michigan cannot lower its food stamp error rate, in addition to the federal fine, the state may be forced to pay for 75% of food stamp administrative costs.